I'm Christine Ferrouge, and this is Joy Ray.
Hi all.
And we are here at Gearbox Gallery in Oakland, California.
Just thank you all for being here. It's really great to see so many faces, and we're excited to share our work with you.
Yeah. So I think what we want to start with is a little bit about how this show came to be. Joy had been helping me try to find somebody to partner with for this show for several months. She had suggested other artists that we know and friends, and none of it was really working. It didn't work out for whatever reason. And one afternoon, I texted Tavi Lee, who's our exhibition coordinator here, and of one of these new pieces by Joy. And I thought, maybe something like this. And she immediately texts me back and is like, "Oh yes, this." And I was like, "Really?" So
it was very surprising for both of us. Yeah. So I was so excited to find Christine the perfect person to partner with, and was suggesting all these folks, and I was like, lo and behold, that was me. So yeah.
And I mean, we couldn't be happier because we're friends. We find each other in different cities. Last, I think I saw you in Miami when you were the day after you sold that piece at Ping Pong. Chicago, LA a lot. We meet up in LA a lot. So, I mean, I'm really excited about this pairing because of the way your work abstractly represents something that I'm realizing is more and more, like the title of our show, Watching Waiting, is really what I do as a mom. And as a human looking over, watching out for other humans, that theme coming together it just really feels wonderful to me.
And I think superficially we were sort of like, does this make sense? Our art is very different. Obviously Christine's working in oil paints at this kind of monumental scale, and these works are not oil paint. They're woven and they're at this small scale. And so we're like, how does this fit together? But I think it's that underlying idea of precariousness and kind of tenuousness and suspense that really is the commonality here. So in this body of work, I was really interested in ideas of precariousness. And I think, I live in Hawaii on the Big Island where there's volcanoes, and they've been very active this year. A second one woke up for a moment, and then living in California before that, this idea that earthquakes can happen and volcanoes can explode and all sorts of things in the world can be less stable than they seem. And I was looking for a way to really bring that to life through materials and have that kind of fragility and things kind of almost disintegrating in front of your eyes, but still sort of hanging together.
Yeah, and I think I love that you are representing that in this abstract. I mean, it's actually kind of literal in a way, but it's the abstract essence to, what I'm thinking about, especially with young almost teen and almost teen girls, and I'm looking at this one behind you guys here, where amongst their peers, or what is this psychological state that they're in? You can't read what's in somebody's mind, but what's in somebody's mind is often a very powerful thing that is going to determine how well they stay together, right? So I'm just, the pairing is really exciting to me because I think the important part of my work is that abstract thing that is sometimes hard to talk about, and then together we're talking about the same thing.
Well, and I think it's so profound too, because one of the things that is precarious is this idea of the climate and the environment, sort of the future of the planet. And then I think about, you as a mother as you have an investment in the future that, as someone who doesn't have children, that I can be a little more, okay, that's interesting. I can think about it intellectually, but I think, in our conversations, it became clear to me that you don't have that, separation from that idea.
Yeah, no,
my people
are going to probably hopefully be here longer than me.
Yes.
And so I have a lot of stakes.
Yes.
Yeah, we talked about that over lunch when we were playing the show, and I have been thinking about that a lot, when you asked just that question, what does it mean to be watching and waiting over your children. But it is about the humans on the planet in general, you know? And it's, so for me, there's different aspects. There's the physical environment, there's the psychological, like there's the social environment. In my work previously, I dealt a lot with princess and their contemporary culture. I asked questions about that too.
Yeah.
So.
Now I'm curious, how does this work relate to other paintings that you've done in the past? So what are you thinking of with these two paintings in particular?
I think with this work, it is always kind of carrying that theme of observing these people in my life and all the aspects around that. I think with these in general, I did study, I spent 5 weeks in Spain in 2019, and I think I did ask myself the question going into it, what did I learn there in the Prado of the history paintings that I haven't maybe quite really worked through? And this isn't the biggest painting I've done. There's another one in pretty similar size. Interior spaces that are about the characters in between the characters, and that's in my other work too. But these have like a little deeper, I mean, not that dark, but they are a little darker in color palette. And I think again, like figuring out how to break up this space so that I don't have to put it on an 8 by 10 foot one canvas. At the end of this show, they're going to go in my car and they're going to go to LA with me.
And I love that. I love that, you know, it's number one, it has this logistical benefit to it that your canvases break down into smaller pieces, but I think it also really speaks to that idea of separations between people, and that all of the characters in this painting are kind of in their own sort of marked off world with these gaps between, and it's kind of that gap of the unknowable that's between them. And so I love that. And it's fascinating watching Christine hang this, by the way. This is precision in action here. Getting those to line up is amazing. So,
I don't do a lot of stuff precisely. I'm a little more into raw gestural movement.
It's an engineering feat for sure. Yeah, and these came out of, so I work a lot with textiles and painting, and generally I work quite large. I took a weaving workshop in January in Oxbow, Michigan. It was very cold, so maybe I had coldness on the brain. But I was, you know, my goal was to try to find these weavings that would kind of almost disintegrate in front of you. And one thing that I was thinking about a lot, for a while I lived in Southern California, in the closest kind of ski resort to LA. So it would get cold there, but not all the time. So a lot of times it would snow and then the sun would come out and everything would sort of melt. And there was this lake, Jackson Lake, that would freeze over, but it wouldn't freeze completely. And families would come up to the mountain and they'd go out onto the ice because it looked very fun. And sometimes it would hold, and sometimes it wouldn't hold so well. So I had this vision of, you know, footsteps on a frozen lake and a little hairline crack starting to form that person wasn't aware of yet. And that kind of suspense is what I was really interested in seeing if I could, you know, produce materially.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just in love with this work, and I love that story too, because I'm actually from Minnesota, so we drive cars out onto the lake in Minnesota, but you have to know like how long it's been, how cold it's been.
Yeah.
How does this relate to your other work? Because this was an exciting new piece. Like the piece that I forwarded to Tavy was an exciting new piece. It was brand new. Like you put it on Instagram, but it was different than the other work that you did. So and it was really hard for me not to also put one of your text pieces in this show. But she was like, no. That Tavy was like, no, we'll just stick to one thing. So I was like, okay, you know. But you have tell us how it relates to your other work.
I mean, generally speaking, the work that I make is always in this black and white monochromatic scale, or I guess achromatic scale. And I think about like what it is that's interesting to me about black and white is it kind of makes things like a diagram, or like sheet music or x-rays. It has this idea of like, can we see to the core essence of something and get down to it, you know, to black and white, right? And so that's what draws me to black and white, apart from just aesthetically. It's my taste. And I work a lot with ideas of, you know, things that are kind of falling apart and this sort of disintegration. But I think this weaving I'm so excited about because it really opens up, you know, it's a real structure that you can really then pull apart. I think there's so much opportunity that I'm excited about with it. Yeah.
And what are you working on now?
Well, I'm getting ready for my thesis show. I'm getting my MFA right now in Chicago through a low residency program at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And so I'm going to have my thesis show in just a couple of months. So I was like, should I really do another show right before?
That's the other thing. I was like, well, she's going to say no because she's too busy.
Too busy. But it's great.
But you said
it's
yes.
Perfect. Yes. I was so excited. Yeah. So tell me, I was curious, I was thinking about your work in the context of art history. I know you mentioned the Prado, but I would love to know more about kind of how you see this in the history of oil painting and of figurative painting.
Definitely. Well, one is the scale. So they are always life size or larger than life, which is significant to me. Well, it relates to the history paintings of Spanish painters like Velázquez, but it's really important for me that the girls particularly are life size or larger for the statement that they're not little dollies to be put away on the shelf, but they have a strong presence, and a 6-foot man, if these are hung properly, he has to look up at them. They're to be, reckoned with. And also, I mean, this is about girls. The one in the back is also about childhood in general. And when you're in it as a child, it is very important what you are doing. And all of our play and imagination work is a preparation for the rest of life. The trials or the challenges that we work through. That's a little bit about scale and then not with this work as much, but in previous series, princesses and women have been painted throughout all of art history. And so I think about that and how mine is like a contemporary take and analysis on that. There's a really cool article about me right now with Mario Hernandez at Oakland Art Murmur that talks a little bit more about that. You guys can all check that out. And I think before we take questions, do you have something you want to say or what's next for you?
Yeah, what's next is, like I said, my thesis show in Chicago, and then I'm going to have a museum show in Southern California that opens in September. So I'm very excited about that. So I have a lot to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very busy.
Yeah. And for me, I move into my LA studio next week, and I am working on a series of girls getting ready in the mirror and prepare this cool moment where we're like a little self-aware of our identity, and even the idea of, and this is the same in Mario's article, like portraiture and the audience's interaction, but then also in my next series, like our interaction with ourselves. So there's multiple layers and mirror as metaphor too. So actually, it's funny because what I say is it's the stopping and looking and responding to the work, which is a lot like watching and waiting, that you can't quantify. I know I sometimes go to my studio and just have coffee with my paintings. I like to have my lunch in my studio because I look at it. Me and my paintings have a relationship, and it's not because I actually know the people in the paintings. The figures in the paintings are their own people. But I started this one about a year ago and completed it in November-ish. And it's, it's like thinking of the composition. I sometimes print it out on just black and white and fold it up to where the breaks are gonna be, so we're not running through someone's face or something strange. And then sketch it out with charcoal, do a brown underpainting, and I have it up on the wall the way it is, but then if I need to work on something a little closer, like a foot or a face, I'll put it on a big easel. So it's important to me that they're light enough and they can go back into place so that I can be constantly moving them around.
And do you work on them, you know, simultaneously?
These two were made in the studio at the same time. I think it's important to work on, and like, it's like, oh, this is really funny now that I'm saying it. I was gonna say, it's important to have at least 3 things going on all at the same time. As an artist, it's important, I think, to like spread your energy and working in groups of 3. And I'm like, I got 3 babies here. I think, yeah, it's like how much hours went into it is like almost impossible for me to actually track. There's a really awesome interview of me by the literary magazine The Anna that's coming out next week or the week after, that like we talked a lot about motherhood and being an artist. So I feel like I can't say everything in that now, but before I had my own kids, I would say that my paintings were my babies, okay? And like, I think a good relationship with your own children and a good relationship with your art is very similar. You do what you can, you watch over it, and then you send it out into the world, right? And you love it, right? You do what you can, and then you watch and wait. So, I think, and I've mentioned before, like,
And then you sell them, ultimately.
Okay, but I don't sell them. Actually, but the only ones you can buy are these, yeah.
I love hearing how my work is received by other people that are not me. To me, it feels like it's part of a continuity of all the things that I think about. So to me, it's just kind of a piece, but it is a particular body of work that is a little bit distinct from other things that I've done. But I do, you know, there's things that I'm interested in that I'm always thinking about, in this idea of precariousness and kind of like this idea of 2 worlds. There's the world that we know, and there's the world that we don't know. And how do those 2 things kind of influence each other? What are the leakages, the porousness between those 2 worlds? And so there is kind of a ghostly, like it's white, but it's kind of a ghostly white, right? There's a little bit of spectrality going on here that I always like. So it's like things to be a little bit haunted.